Hi. Well, in our last talk, we discussed how God saw his relationship with his people as a marriage and how it went so wrong, how men and women became adulterous, how God's people ran after other gods and pursuits. We talked about Hosea and how he was told to buy his wife back at a price and restore their relationship. And this demonstrated just what God was going to do for us, how he was going to win us back at a price. And this act of buying us back is called redemption. Indeed, the word redeem actually means to buy back at a price. We heard last time how sin created a distance between mankind and God. God couldn't live with the presence of that sin, and by that I mean he couldn't live with the immorality of men. He couldn't live with the pride of men, the greed of men, the self-centeredness of mankind, the idolatry, the violence of men, the hatred within men, the lack of honesty, the lack of faithfulness of mankind. And all of this ruined that close relationship that God had so desired. It's as if God retreated. God is a God who loves what is morally right, and he can't live amongst what is morally wrong. Now, it's important to know this. God was not taken by surprise with mankind's behaviour. And he knew full well that free will meant that many would not choose to follow him and follow in his ways. And he also knew that men and women, in their own strength, couldn't make the grade. But he had a plan that would redeem people from their brokenness and from their guilt. We needed a hero, a rescuer, a redeemer. We needed a substitute or a scapegoat. Now, I heard a very weird story once. Bear with me. It sounds ridiculous. It is ridiculous. Imagine this. You buy your son a tropical fish tank filled with colourful fish. One day those fish start to fight each other, and your son can do little to stop them killing each other. Your son is despairing, so you come up with a plan. Son, I've got a solution and it will work. I will turn you into a fish. I'll put you in the tank and you will be the answer to the problem. Mind you, the fish will turn on you and they will kill you, but don't be too afraid. I will bring you back to life. Sounds like a plan, the boy answers. Well, there's something else you need to know. You'll remain a fish forever. And the boy was willing to go ahead. What a ridiculous story, and it's also a metaphor that you can only take so far, of course. But there is a sense that this was close to what Jesus chose to do. He became a man here on earth, and he remains today a human being. The Bible tells us in 1 John, this is why God sent Jesus into the world to be our substitute. Hebrews 4 tells us clearly that Jesus lived a life of perfect obedience to his dad, his Abba. Sinless, making him the only person in history who did not deserve God's judgment. And for this reason, he could legitimately become our substitute. An extraordinary exchange was planned, our guilt for his innocence. You know, just before Jesus was executed, he took his disciples for a walk to this place so that they could talk and they could pray. It's in the valley between Jerusalem and the Mount of Olives, into the olive groves of Gethsemane. And Jesus asked his disciples to pray, and then he himself withdrew a short distance to speak with his dad, the only one that really understood what he was about to go through. Jesus knew what was ahead, and his anxiety was so great that blood burst out from his forehead. It's a known medical condition called hematidrosis, and it's not that uncommon. It would happen in the World War I trenches. It happens to people facing execution. The chemical reaction causes the capillaries to break down in the sweat glands of the forehead in particular at times of great stress. And time again his disciples would fall asleep, much to Jesus' distress. Finally, the time came for him to be betrayed, and even now his kindness shone through as he healed a Roman guard. He was taken up these very steps to the villa of Joseph ben Caiaphas. It was at the top of these steps that Jesus heard a cockerel crowing, and he turned in concern for his dear friend Peter, who broke down in tears when he realized Jesus knew that one of his closest friends had denied even knowing him. Jesus was taken to a man called Annas for questioning. "Why do you question me?" Jesus answered. "All that I've said was in public, and it was at synagogues. It was heard by many. Let them testify." Immediately an officer struck him, and he responded, "If I've spoken wrongly, then testify that I have. Why do you strike me?" He was then sent to Caiaphas the high priest, and here he kept largely silent. When asked the direct question, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of God?" he simply answered, "You have said it, and now I too say it. The Son of Man will soon be sitting at the right hand of God." And with those very brave words, his fate was sealed. They spat in his face, struck him, ridiculed him, challenged him. The high priest tore his clothes and called for Jesus' death. And Jesus was taken to this place. This is the judgment gate of Pontius Pilate. "Are you the king of the Jews?" "It is as you say," Jesus replied. Pilate marveled at him and documented that he could find no fault in him. Now there was a man in captivity who did deserve punishment. His name too was Jesus Barabbas. Interestingly, Barabbas means son of the Father, Bar, son of, Abba, the Father. And Jesus, son of the Father, who deserved to die, was let off so that Jesus, the Son of the Father, could take his place. What an intriguing picture. "We want his blood," the crowd shouted, and the soldiers now also began to mock him. This period of time following Jesus' arrival at the city is often referred to as the time of Jesus' Passion. Passion is a misunderstood word. It comes from the Latin word passio, and it means great suffering or intense suffering. What is also a great comfort is to know that he understands our suffering. For those that have been falsely accused, and there are not many things that are more deeply damaging than false accusation, he's been there before you. For those that have suffered with anxiety, understand that he sweat drops of blood in great anguish and understands. For those that understand what it is to be betrayed and denied, then you understand what Jesus went through, and he understands what you go through. Take courage and strength from this. He was mocked, he was scoffed, he was abused, he was beaten. Our Messiah understands our suffering. He was crucified outside the city walls on a very busy road, almost certainly the road to Damascus, which runs alongside the tallest part of Mount Moriah, where he was to be executed. It's the very spot where 2,000 years earlier God told Abraham, "Of course your son will not die here, but this is where I will bring my son to die in the future." This road was public, and as they passed, we read that people wagged their heads and hurled insults at him. He saved others, but he can't save himself. How they misunderstood. "He's the king of the Jews. Well, let him come down from the cross, and then we'll believe him," the Pharisees called out. Jesus looked at the crowd. "God forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." We read in Luke that during this period, all of his acquaintances who accompanied him from Galilee were standing at a distance watching these things. You know, one of the tragedies of history is that Adam willfully disobeyed God and a separation occurred. God and Adam used to enjoy each other's company, and they would walk together in the cool of the evening. It was at great pain that sin caused such a separation. It was both painful for God and for Adam, who had been used to a closeness. It's like a veil had been drawn between them, a distance. And Jesus had never known anything but closeness with his Father, with his Dad, with his Abba. The same deep, deep friendship that they had before the incarnation, before Jesus came to earth, had continued while he was on earth. And now we're told that between the hours of noon and 3 in the afternoon, for 3 hours there was total darkness across the land as God turned his back on his own Son. Why? Because our sins were heaped upon his shoulders. He was rejected by his Father so that we need not be. He took our rejection upon himself. And you get the sense that this was the most sickening of moments for Jesus. You get the sense that even he did not know quite how bad it was going to be separated from his dad because of our sins. My God, why have you forsaken me, abandoned me, deserted me? That's what it means. His relationship with his Father was brutally dislocated so that our relationship with Father might be restored. This really was the worst time of it for Jesus. He was given a drink of wine vinegar on a stick and soon after committed himself into God's hands. He gave up his spirit with the words, "It is finished." And we're told at that very moment the curtain in the temple that separated man from God was torn in two. It really was finished. The job was done. Our hero had come through. Let me talk for just a moment, if you don't mind, about something in Judaism called the scapegoat. Once each year, at a time called Yom Kippur, 2 goats were selected. One was sacrificed, and the other, called the scapegoat, was taken by the high priest, who laid his hands on the goat, and the sins of the people were symbolically laid upon the head of the goat. And this goat was then driven from the camp, or later driven from Jerusalem, about 5 or 6 miles, to what we're told was a desolate place from where it would never return. Well, 2,000 years ago, Jesus became both of these goats. He was both to die for us and to take our sin upon his shoulders so that we might be put right with God. He became our scapegoat. Now, the word scapegoat is a little misunderstood. The Hebrew word used here is azazel. It is used in every case for this scapegoat. And it's related to the word departure. A departure took place. God turned his back and departed from his own Son in order that he could turn his face towards us. What kind of love is this? The transaction was complete. Our sin was laid upon him, and his innocence was gifted to us. It's extraordinary. He was rejected so that we could become acceptable again. Is all this true? Could it be true? Well, that depends upon the resurrection. If Jesus stayed dead, then no, it is all a lie and it is all in vain, as Paul the Apostle said. But if he was raised from the dead, then all is true and all is not in vain. But that's for our talk in the next session, the resurrection. God bless.